the real reason I went there was to get dates. You know, it was the big band era, you know, Glenn Miller, Artie Shaw, Jack Teagarden. So that was the reason that I went into town, because there weren't any girls on Point Loma campus. So I would try and get dates there and then go to the dances in San Diego. Well, in those days, it was more like the professor taught and you memorized it and got it in your head, and then when the test came back, then you spit it out and it came out right. It really changed when December 7th happened. That whole foundation of what I was thinking about just crashed, because it seemed so premature, and it was like the bottom of something dropping out. You know, you build something and then all of a sudden you realize it's nothing. Well, when the executive order came out, I mean that was just a slap in the face, and so what else could we do? We just had to sell everything, give away things, and we had a car, and my brother drove it to the dealer and walked from the dealer to the train station. The eaves were kind of like this, and there was just a plywood between each of the things, and so there was space in between, so you could hear anything that went on at your next door neighbor. You know, they would be talking, and you could listen in, you could hear everything. And if you went in the back, you knew that the horses were there, because you could smell it. At night, you would go out the door, and there would be a searchlight. It would follow you all the way to the restroom. Then after you got finished and you came back out, that searchlight would follow you all the way back to your horse's stable. A paradoxical thing about there, in Santa Anita, there was this grandstand, and at the top of the grandstand, they had the camouflage nets. And they hung the camouflage nets, and they wove the camouflage nets for the Army. While we were in camp, or an assembly center, we actually provided camouflage netting for the Army. Well, in spite of where we were, I mean, we were doing this, we weren't forced to say, they didn't grab us by the collar and said, work here. We did it voluntarily. And then when we got to Poston, then we were herded into Army trucks, and we got our baggage, and we went past Camp 1. Camp 2 was in a dust storm. It was just blowing and blowing, and we were on these Army trucks, and we saw people using umbrellas to shield themselves because it was so dusty you could hardly see the visible forms of their bodies going against the dust. And then we went to our Poston 3, and they gave us a great big kind of a gunny sack or a big sack, and then we had to fill it with hay. That was going to be our mattress to sleep on that night. And so we put hay in there, and then went to our barracks, and the barracks had cracks on the floor, cracks on the side, and you could just see the dust come in and dust coming in the floor. And so we were assigned our barracks, and I think we had cots or something like that, and we slept on. So that was our first night. It was just miserable, just miserable. But anyway, I had some background in teaching, so they hired me as a second grade teacher. So I taught school of the second grade, but then when I would go home, I was so angry. Being a nice Asian, I would not explode in front of people. And I would go home and I would cuss at my parents because I was so angry. I wanted to get it out some way. And then I'd put on my face and go out later on. But there were a group of people that seemed to be happy there and seemed to have a sense of peace and joy and solemnity. So I said, well, I want to find out makes them tick. So then when they came by, they invited me, and they happened to be persons that were a Protestant faith. So they said, well, why don't you come to our church in our camp? And so one evening, the pastor asked if I wanted to receive this personal faith. So I did. I received Christ as my Savior. And so that changed my life. It cleaned my mouth out and cleaned my heart out. And when I went home, I never cussed a word. My folks says, what happened to you? And I said, well, I had a religious experience, and that's what happened to me. So I got a BA from Asbury College, and then across the street was a seminary, and I got a Master in Christian Education, which was for 2 years. And then from there, I returned to Berkeley, California, and there was a seminary there, and I received my was a Bachelor of Divinity at Berkeley Baptist Divinity School. The chairperson said, "You now graduated from San Diego State University." I wanted to put my tassel over, to say that I graduated. So he said that, and I put my tassel over, and it came off. And he was so gracious, this president came over to help me get that tassel back on. I'll never forget that. And then it's meant a lot to my family, too. My children were there. Well, 2 of them were there. My 2 sons, and they took a picture of us. Some people took a picture, and I had a real broad smile. And so every time he sees that picture, he says, "Dad, smile like you did at your graduation." And he always teases me like that. So says, "You never look so happy in your life."